I have been becoming obsessed with Charlotte Mason. And if you are like me and want to know more about Charlotte Mason and how to apply her methods and philosophies in your own homeschool, follow along. I am really falling in love with Charlotte Mason's methods and all of her philosophies for both the family life and homeschool life. Not only has her method been tried and tested for over 100 years, but it has been found to be both restful and peaceful for both the homeschooling mom and their students. A lot of the things she has to say often sounds too good to be true. However, the proof is in the pudding. There are just tons of stories of families after families who are successfully graduating their children, their homeschool students through the Charlotte Mason method, and they are going on into their future lives and careers as lifelong learners. Over this past year, I've been doing a lot of research into Charlotte Mason and her methods. I've mostly been listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, and reading other people's blog posts and books on Charlotte Mason. And I found that there's quite a variety in ways to interpret her approach. And I finally decided that I really just need to read Charlotte Mason's own work herself. And now it's been recommended that you should start with her 6th volume. So she's written 6 books, all on home education, parenting, all of these things. And her 6th and final book is the one that's recommended to start with. And that is because it is a recap or a review of her entire philosophy on education 30 years after she implemented all of her methods and put them into practice. And so even within her own book, there is proof that her methods really do work, and she has seen the fruitfulness of her methods come to fruition, and she writes about it in her book. So I started covering sort of my own thoughts, my own review of the book in the last video, which I'll link below. And in today's video, I want to continue going through what I am learning from the book, the quotes from the book that I find the most useful or which have spoken to me, and how I might try to apply these principles and philosophies in our own homeschool. So in this video today, I'm going to be going back and looking at chapter 2 again, because I did kind of a quick overview over it in the last video. So I'll be doing chapter 2 and chapter 3 in today's video, and also talk about how these principles can be made applicable in your homeschool. And I also want to talk, if you want to stick around to the end, a catchphrase that we hear a lot about related to Charlotte Mason is the idea of living books. And if you are like me, you might find it confusing and not really know what is a living book, or a lot of people are considering lots of different things living books, which Charlotte Mason does not consider a living book. So if you want to know what a living book really is, according to Charlotte Mason, who kind of coined the phrase, stick around to the end of the video and I will share my thoughts on what I am learning from her books. So in my last video, I kind of only covered 2 quotes that stuck out to me the most. And I find when I go back to the chapters, I keep finding more truths, more nuggets of things, gems that you can use that are really thought-provoking, and they keep sticking out to me the more and more I go back. And I think that's the kind of way the book is going to be. You really have to kind of read it and reread it, and more things stick out to you. So these are a couple of things that I noticed the last time. I had highlighted them, but I didn't review them in my video from last week. One quote says, "How many teachers know that children require no pictures excepting the pictures of great artists, which have quite another function than that of illustration? They see for themselves in their own minds a far more glorious and indeed more accurate presentation than we can afford in our miserable daubs. They read between the lines and put in all the author has left out." Another quote says, "Now the mind, being spiritual, knows no fatigue. The brain, too, duly nourished with the proper food for the body, allowed due conditions of fresh air and rest, should not know fatigue. Given these 2 conditions, we have a glorious field of educational possibilities." And another quote, she says, "We give them play, and play is altogether necessary and desirable, but it is not the avenue which leads to the mind. We give them a fitting environment, which is again altogether desirable, and again not the way to the mind. We teach them beautiful motion, and we do well, for the body too must have its education. But we are not safe if we take these bypaths as approaches to the mind. The way to the mind is quite a direct way. Mind must come into contact with mind through the medium of ideas. And then later on she says, the only fit sustenance for the mind is ideas, and ideas come from great books. So you can take from these quotes what you take from them, but what I see is that we teachers and even the school system, we really underestimate children and their ability to use their minds. And we often think we need to come up with these curriculum, we get to come up with these wonderful ways of presenting information, but children are fully capable of taking in the ideas directly from the minds of the authors themselves and take in what they need. They are able to grasp them, and even in a maybe more wonderful way than when we as teachers try to paraphrase or amplify or make our own kind of anecdotal statements having to do with them. And Charlotte really is emphasizing that we just need to present them the ideas through great books, and children will learn. And the other point is that minds are always capable of learning. It doesn't fatigue. And so in as much as you feel that they need a break from education, they just need to play, she is saying the mind is always capable of learning. They learn in play, they learn in activities, but don't feel that you need to hesitate to give them only little bits of information or a little bit of reading time because it's too much and it's exhausting. Their minds will grow and expand and learn to love feeding it with all the great, wonderful ideas. So here are some quotes from chapter 3. There are good and evil tendencies in body and mind, heart and soul. And the hope set before us is that we can foster the good so as to attenuate the evil. Another quote says, "It is our business to know of what parts and passions a child is made up, to discern the dangers that present themselves, and still more the possibilities of free going in delightful paths." She says, "As for moral lessons, they are worse than useless. Children want a great deal of fine and various moral feeding, from which they draw the lessons they require." She says, "In such ways, the great thoughts of great thinkers illuminate children, and they grow in knowledge and in knowledge of God." To introduce children to literature is to install them in a very rich and glorious kingdom, to bring a continual holiday to their doors, to lay before them a feast exquisitely served. And finally, she says, "It is no small part of education to have seen much beauty, to recognize when we see it, and to keep ourselves humble in its presence." So the truths found in literature, in great literature, and in the rest of Charlotte Mason's work, you'll see that she's referring to living books. The truths found in living books, including the Bible, are enough to teach children morals, good habits, good characters, all of these things, and that we don't need to teach these things as lessons. We don't really need to say, do unto others as they will have them do unto you. The child is going to pick up on those ideas through great stories, and they learn to want to emulate those characters and qualities. Now, of course, as parents, we can talk about these things, and it's not that Charlotte is saying parents never share your own opinions, never talk to your child, just read them the books and then be quiet and don't say anything else. But in a lot of these things, say for example, history or science or math or the arts, things like that, what more do we have to say on them to add to the knowledge and information, the ideas that are coming from these great authors? we really have nothing to add. We can discuss it with them. If they don't kind of get the points, we can ask questions to sort of draw out more ideas and help them think more deeply on them, but without giving them the ideas, without kind of giving them and summarizing it for them or paraphrasing or giving our own versions of what we think they mean. We really want to allow the child to draw upon those ideas and pinpoint the things that stand out to them the most on their own, independently. Now, also, I mentioned in last week's video that when we read, we first want to just let the child narrate back to us what they have gotten out of the reading. We don't want to interject and explain before allowing them to narrate. And then after the narration, if we feel that a deeper discussion is needed, we then can do that and draw out more from them by asking good questions and things like that. But another thing that Charlotte Mason does say is that a parent or a teacher does have information that is important to pass on to the children, and that is in our own life experiences and in our own areas of expertise. We may have an expertise, we may have life experiences that might have lessons of truth. Without having to say, this is the truth that you need to learn from this lesson I'm giving you, don't give them the truths. Allow the story to let them come to their own conclusions because they are fully capable, is what Charlotte Mason is saying. In chapter 3, Charlotte actually discusses several pitfalls or mistakes that educators make. And she says that these are things that we need to avoid doing. So one of them is the charming teacher. The teacher with just this overpowering personality, the teacher that the children just look up to and want to please. And so they try to come up with all the right answers and do all the right things and get their lessons done and get all, everything to please the teacher, because this teacher has such a charming personality. In fact, I was listening to a podcast that talked about this, and they said that it's better to really not have overly interesting way of presenting or talking, to allow the books to do, we could read with expression in the books, but then when it's us, talking and discussing, we're not trying to win the child over to agree with our perspective or try to be charming in that kind of a charismatic way. That is what Charlotte says we shouldn't be doing. And the more plain speaking, I wouldn't want to say boring, but the more plainly we speak and just draw the attention of the amazement and the wonder at the works of art and the books that we are presenting to them, that is where the amazement and wonder should come from, and not with the teacher. And secondly, it's the teacher that tends to talk too much. When we're teaching a lesson, and I have been at fault with this because I've been teaching co-ops for the past couple of years, and I prepare a lesson. In fact, I've written out and read over sort of my introductory, speech that I might present to the children to kind of tease them into the topic. And really, I should have just jumped right in to the reading and allowed the reading to speak for itself, rather than feel that I need to do all the upfront explanation in order for them to understand the passages we were reading. So a teacher that talks too much and a teacher that's overly charming, Charlotte Mason says, stay away from that. That hinders the child's ability to learn, and it hinders their education. So a quick sort of acronym that I came across, and I can't remember the source of where I got it. If I can, I'll link it below. But a quick way to understand what Charlotte Mason means by living books, and how can you determine what a living book is. If you've got a book in your hand, how do you know that is a living book or not? We'll go through the acronym that spells the word living. So the L in living stands for literary power. They are powerful words that are just beautifully written, that draw in your attention, and you don't have to constantly be reining your child's attention back in to focus on what you're saying, because they are just so absorbed in the words that you are reading. So L stands for literary power. I stands for ideas. Charlotte Mason says that living books plant the seeds of ideas into your children's mind that just cause them to constantly wonder and ponder on the things that they've read about. You may find your children constantly talking about it because it's just intrigued them, and they look for more of these ideas in the world around them. That living books give us ideas to think on and wonder and be amazed by. V stands for virtuous. Living books emulate virtuous characters and encourage your child to emulate these characteristics as well. They show both the villain and the good guy, and there's usually some type of conflict where you can see justice and truth and righteousness reflected in the reading. I stands for inspiring. When an author is just so passionate about the topic they are writing about that even if it's a topic that you have never been interested in or never even heard of before, you're suddenly drawn into the book because they are so passionate about this topic that you can't help but get excited when you read it. The N stands for narrative. Living books tend to be narrative storytelling, where you are able to get a beginning, middle, and ending, and it's told as a story rather than a list of facts. Now, not all living books are done in a storytelling way, but another good test of whether it's a living book or not is that they're easy to narrate back. When you read it to your child, it's done in a sequential kind of way that the child is able to narrate back to you what you've read, rather than just a simple list of facts or dates. It is really done in a way that is catching and able to retain in your memory. G stands for generational. Living books are good for all ages, and they stand the test of time. Even when living books have themes that are outdated and no longer apply to us, they still have essential truths that stand the test of time and apply to all times and peoples. So that's the word living. But there's another word that can completely summarize what a living book is, and that's the word imagination. Living books help image the ideas contained inside our minds, and they help our brain digest those ideas so that they can become part of our knowledge. So a really quick recap of what I am doing differently in our homeschool, and I've gradually been adding and supplementing more and more things, is that I'm adding in more living books. I'm going through the books that we currently have and realizing a lot of our textbooks and curriculum are not living. They are homeschooling moms, teachers, and publishing companies that are really paraphrasing, amplifying information from actual living books, which they feel that they're really simplifying to help children at different ages and stages understand, but they're not living. I've gone through several of our books. History is one of them, where I am now going to be picking up living books. Right now we are in the Middle Ages, and I've begun buying and ordering and finding at the library books that are living, that are related to the Middle Ages, biographies and stories of people who lived during those times that will really help us imagine and see what life would have been like in those times, as opposed to a book that just quickly summarizes all of China's Middle Ages history or India and things like that in 1 or 2 chapters, a quick summary and overview, which is not how the children are going to become fascinated and drawn in and commit these ideas to their memory banks and their knowledge for a long time. And the other thing is that I have been changing my approach as a teacher. I've really been cutting down. As you can see, I can be long-winded, and I've been cutting down the amount of talking that I'm doing, and I'm really just asking questions and getting my children to come up with what they are hearing from the literature during our Bible reading and other books, and then I'm leaving it there. If I feel like they've gotten enough out of it, I'm leaving it there because those are the things that stood out to them the most, and for their ages, which I have a kindergarten student and a grade 4 student, that is enough. And as we go on, the older they get, the more and more they're going to retain, and the more they're going to become excited about what we are reading and how much they're able to narrate back. So those are the 2 major things that I am doing right now. In upcoming videos, because as I've hinted, I have been changing a lot of our books over. And I know in 2 videos ago, I mentioned that I would not be changing our curriculum, that I was just gonna add in or sprinkle in a little Charlotte Mason to what we were already doing. But I've become convinced that to really grasp Charlotte Mason, to really commit to this idea and have faith in the process, I personally need to embrace it and start to rethink how we are doing our homeschool. So in upcoming videos, I'm in the research process. I am looking at different Charlotte Mason approaches and Charlotte Mason curriculums, and I'm going to be reviewing each one and sharing the pros and cons. And then I'm going to finally, at the end of this series, this upcoming series, I will share with you which curriculum I will choose for our homeschool for next September, year 2024 and 2025. So if you're interested in that, follow along in this series. If you are also researching Charlotte Mason and you're not sure which avenue is the best one for you, you can see my research and the pros and cons lists that I can come up with, and maybe I can help you out. But I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.